Hello and what is up YouTube? My name is G3Iron and welcome back to another discussion where today we're going to talk about economics. Specifically, we're going to talk about two methods that players use to make currency regardless of the farming strategies that are available due to patch, due to new league, due to mechanics that are maybe old mechanics that are getting new implementations or new discoveries of interaction. Regardless of how much players are juicing their maps or farming bosses, these are tried and true methods that players make oodles of currency with on a league by league basis with repeated levels of success. I didn't want to make this too clickbaity of a title and I don't want to promise you too much. I just want to lay this before you that arbitrage trading and bulk trading are two ways that players consistently pay out and build out and pay for massive top-end character creation and awesome itemization, whether that's through self-crafting or just purchasing items. Players use these methods every single league on repeat in order to make currency. This is an option. So a lot of players out there ask the question, how is it that players consistently can make currency, and what is it that players are doing to trade in the economy and consistently generate the levels of profit that they're able to do? Well, we're going to chat about two ways that players do that, and it has nothing to do with killing monsters. It's got everything to do with interacting with the markets. So if that's interesting to you, then stick around because we're going to dive into it deep today. First off, for some definitions, what is arbitrage trading? So arbitrage trading is when you exchange currency that produces a profit based on the ratio of currency exchanged. So you use this, whether or not you recognize it or not, maybe most oftentimes you use this at the end of a play session when you've collected a whole bunch of what's oftentimes called bubblegum currency, right? You've dropped a whole bunch of chromatics and jewelers and fusings and whatever else, right? Alterations, etc. And you don't want to keep those currencies in that form. You want to turn that into a tradable form, right? Because the gold standard in Path of Exile is Chaos and Divine Orbs. It used to be Exalteds and Chaos, but those are typically the currencies that most players trade in. So what you're going to do is you're going to make an exchange of currency, alterations, fusings, jewelers, that bubblegum currency, chromatics. You're going to exchange that currency and give that to some other player who's going to give you back either divines, exalteds, chaos orbs, etc. You're making an exchange. The player that's making that trade with you is doing arbitrage trading and is going to be making a profit based off of a huge volume of trades that they do and a huge volume of currency that they're going to trade, making ratios at certain input levels and certain output levels, so that way they're always getting more than what they're giving back. With arbitrage trading in Path of Exile, there's a couple of factors that are in play. In the real world scenarios, arbitrage trading oftentimes happens with currency exchanges when you're traveling in between countries, etc., or when there's a government change and there's a financial destabilization and maybe a currency even will change out due to a government overhaul. But we're not talking real world politics and economics here. We're talking in-game in Path of Exile. And so the principles in play here for us are, number one, that players drop what they do not want, right? If you're dropping bubblegum currency, chromatics, jewelers, fusings, you might say, well, there's no use for me to have these particular items. I'm not going to use them. They're just going to sit in my stash, right? So players drop what they do not want. And then secondly, players can purchase what they do want. So you've dropped bubblegum currency, you don't want it. What you want is exalts, chaos, divines, so you turn your bubblegum currency into that tradable currency that you do want. That's basic principles that are in play here with arbitrage trading in Path of Exile. Let's take a look at an entry level example. So you might have both chaos and chromatics, and you've just watched this video from a bearding balded guy and you're like, okay, I want to get into arbitrage trading. How do I do this? Well, if you have both chaos and chromatics, you could sell your chromatics in a stack of 3 chromatics for 1 chaos orb. This means that you are giving a consumer 3 chromatics and you are receiving back 1 chaos orb. You then could sell 1 chaos orb for 4 chromatics. Every time you make that trade, you are making a profit of 1 chromatic. Now you might be saying, okay, Iron, I don't want the bubblegum currency. How are people making mirrors and paying for top-end characters doing this? Well, every 4 chromatics that you trade, or every 4 trades, if you're just doing really super small amounts of currency in each trade, every 4 trades that you make, you're going to profit 1 chaos. Every 4 chromatics you get in and you sell back out 3, you're keeping an additional 1. You can start to see how this piles up when you do this hundreds or even thousands or tens of thousands of chromatics and chaos orbs worth of exchanges. Now, this is just one example, all right? I'm using this as an example, so please, please, please stick with me. This is just an example. You can do the same thing with chaos and divines, with fusings and chaos, with divines and alterations. You can do this with maps. You can do this with scarabs. You can do this with bestiary beasts. Almost anything in the game you can do this with. Now, there's one thing to think about avoiding with arbitrage trading, and that is unique items. There are some players that try and hoard specific unique items, but generally speaking, the supply of unique items is such that it's really, really tough. Who out there is buying like multiple chevrons that are 6-linked, right? Generally, no, unless they're going to double corrupt them or something. But generally, it's tough to do arbitrage trading where you're trading multiple stacks of something in a bulk amount for unique items or even rare items, right? That's typically thought of as a crafting service and as crafting trading. We're not chatting so much about that today. We're just focusing more on arbitrage trading and bulk trading. So you can take this example and you can take the various ratios that are out there on any market, whether it's the current league or a future league or a past league, and you can look at the ratios on the market of what players are buying certain currencies at and selling certain currencies at, and you're always going to notice that there is a gap. When there's not a gap in the market, two things have happened, right? When there's not a gap, it means one, either somebody's got an old price listing that they might not actually be selling at, or it might mean they've got a mistaken price listing that they're not actually selling at. The third option is they actually are selling at that particular price point, in which case go for it, buy them out, and then resell it, relist it at your ratio, and you just made a whole bunch of profit. That's great as well. Moving from a simple example to maybe a bit next steps in the strategy of arbitrage trading in PoE. Typically, arbitrage traders make their currency on massive volumes of currency, right? The mistake at the moment that maybe some folks are thinking of at this point in our discussion is thinking that arbitrage traders make the bulk of their profit and their currency on volumes of trades. Volumes of trades do matter, so don't hear what I'm not saying. It does matter. You do want to be doing this trade at a ratio that's profitable to you lots and lots of times, but you want to be doing it at such a rate that it is worth your time. So for instance, maybe when you first start out arbitrage trading, maybe you are just selling 3 chromatics for 1 chaos and you're getting back 4 chromatics for 1 chaos. Maybe you start with very small increments. League start scenarios. Oftentimes, arbitrage traders start with very small amounts because players might only have, let's say, 10 or 20 of a particular bubblegum currency as they're playing through the 10x story campaign. So typically on a league start scenario, players will set their ratios at a relatively low rate to begin their trading engine. But it's not just the volumes of trades that matter, it's also the amount of currency that's exchanged. So, for instance, if you're making a 1 chaos profit every 4 trades, and divines are trading at 140 chaos, well then you just multiply 140 by 4, right? And it's going to take you 560 trades to make 1 divine. That is a lot of pings. That is a lot of demand in the market that you're probably not going to hit, right? If you had 500 people pinging you in an hour and you were able to make and fill all of those trades and make all of those flips so that way you're making all this profit, that's still 560 trades an hour. That's a lot of interaction for you to be playing the game to only make 1 divine an hour, right? Pretty low end in terms of the amount of currency that you're making. In fact, even on a league start, just with basic alch and go mapping, that probably doesn't compete in terms of currency generated. So that doesn't sound that great, right? We'll keep following through with the example. If you are able to have a stock of, let's say, 560 chaos and 560 chromatics, then you could make 1 trade to another player, right, who's trading you in a large amount, and then you make your 1 divine profit off of a single trade. So somebody could be buying, let's say, 600 chromatics, or let's say 1200 chromatics, because we've got the stash size to be able to do that. Great, you've now acquired 1200 chromatics. You're going to sell those 1200 chromatics essentially for the same amount of chaos, but you're only going to sell 900 of them. So you've just made a profit of 300 chromatics that you're now going to roll over into more profit, right? Which is going to turn into chaos. In other words, players who are arbitrage traders who make big time currency off this aren't just doing this because all they're doing is sitting in their hideout and accepting trade requests, etc. Sometimes players will make a single trade or 2 trades or maybe 10 trades, let's say in an hour, are. But if every single time they're doing that, they're doing it at a ratio limit that they've set that is worth it to them, well, every time you do this 560 trade, you're making a divine. If you do that 10 times in an hour, you just made 10 divines worth of profit in an hour for, what did I say, 5 or 10 trades? That's fantastic. This is why many human arbitrage traders will set their price point at larger numbers. So for instance, you can go onto Path of Exile and look on the trade site, and you'll notice that for some currency, players will simply be trading at a relatively low ratio, right? Like our example, let's say selling 3 chromatics for 1 chaos and buying 4 chromatics for 1 chaos, relatively low. But what you can do is you can scale that up when you are selling your price point and when you are selling your stack, right, in bulk for your currency. So a player simply scales up the ratio, and you might say, instead of saying you are going to sell or purchase 4 chromatics for 1 chaos, well, you just scale that up. You're going to give somebody 50 chaos if they give you 200 chromatics. Well, now you're scaling up your operations because you've got the currency to do so. You're going to have fewer pings. You're going to have fewer demand, maybe in some cases. In other cases, you might actually have greater number of players coming and pinging you, because oftentimes players, as a league progresses, want to buy items at particular price points, particularly in accompaniment with the crafting bench. So for instance, if it takes 125 chromatics to guarantee a certain outcome on a certain 4-link or a certain 3-link or a certain 6-link, etc., you might want to actually scale up your operation, and you're going to find that you might actually have more demand by scaling up your operation and selling more of whatever particular currency it is that you are arbitrage trading. By selling that in bulk, you might actually up your level of demand, up the number of trades that you have per hour, and continue to up your currency engine that is your hideout that you are flipping with arbitrage trading. Just a word of wisdom from experience, especially after opening league weekend and week. Generally, the longer a league goes, the more quantity you need to have to be able to actually interact and have demand in the market. There's not many people after the first opening weekend that wants to sell, like, 12 chromatics for 3 chaos, right? People are now dealing in the hundreds. So just be aware of that as you set price points. If you begin into arbitrage trading and you're going, hey, why isn't anybody dinging me right now? Why aren't I actually interacting with anybody? Think about where you're at in the league state. Generally, the longer a league goes, the more quantity you need to have, and probably the tighter the ratio needs to be on the profit margin in order for you to actually be able to generate those dings and make trades with players. Now, we've discussed arbitrage trading, which is just currency flipping. Really, it's setting currencies at different ratios and making a small amount of profit off of each of those number of ratio trades that you make. And ultimately, the more that you do that and the higher amounts of currency that you trade, well, that can generate to larger amounts of profit. So really what we're combining here today is not just arbitrage trading, but also bulk trading. So let's chat about bulk trading for a moment. There are a couple of principles in play here for bulk trading in Path of Exile, and this is different than real world markets for the most part. In real world markets, for the most part, when you buy a certain good, when you buy in bulk, you generally get a lower price point for the actual item that you're purchasing. If you're purchasing your favorite cereal, let's say, if you purchase it as an individual box, it's going to have a higher price point per unit than if you buy directly from a supplier, let's say 100 boxes of those particular favorite cereal that you enjoy. Why is that? Well, one of the reasons why is simply in real world economics, supply and demand operates a little bit differently than in an in-game economy like Path of Exile. I don't want to go too far into that. I've actually done a whole 10 video series on real world economics and Path of Exile and the differences. Anyway, that'll be linked somewhere floating around my slightly balding forehead. But today we just want to talk about principles in play for bulk trading in PoE. The reverse is actually true in PoE. While in the real world, you typically get a better deal for each unit that you purchase in bulk, in Path of Exile, the price actually goes up for each of the things that you buy in bulk. So why is this? What are the principles in play here? Well, first, players value quantities of items. So we were just chatting about, let's say, chromatics or fusings. Fusings, for instance, are used to link items, and six linking items is a necessity that every single player that is pushing into maps and that is building out a character in Path of Exile wants to achieve. 6 links is just objectively better than 5 links. So everybody's going to want to have a 6 link at some point rocking on their character. Because it generally takes more than one fusing orb to 6 link an item, players will value fusing orbs in large quantities, whether that's, again, using the crafting bench recipe for 1,500 fusings in order to just guarantee a 6-link, or maybe it's trying to chance it themselves. Players will generally value larger quantities of items rather than smaller numbers of quantities of items. So this helps us with our arbitrage trading, and it teaches us about bulk trading. Players want to buy fusings, but they don't just want to buy one, they want to buy 100. Now, players want to buy 100 fusings, but they don't want to make 100 trades in order to do it. Otherwise, they would just go run 100 maps and just click on the individual fusings that are there. Players don't like to do that. What players like to do is they value having low amounts of trades. Players generally value their clicks and they value their time. Yes, clicks is a unit of measurement in Path of Exile, and eventually at a certain point, players go, I just don't want to click on that, right? That's usually when you're going to upgrade your loot filter and go, I need to loot filter that out. But players value their clicks and players value their time. Also, another unit of measurement that we can use when we're talking about trade in Path of Exile is that players value their sanity, right? The more people you have to message in order to fulfill whatever trade project it is that you're working on, the more frustrated and the more insane you go. As a player who's been trading a whole bunch over the last decade while playing Path of Exile, you can just imagine how insane I've gotten. Indeed, this slightly balding, receding hairline could be yours if you engage for the next 10 years in trading like I have the last 10 years in Path of Exile. The point is, players value low amounts of trades. So instead of making 100 trades to get those 100 fusings that they want, they would much rather interact with one player and make a single trade for those 100 fusings. So players value quantities of items, and players value getting those quantities in as few clicks and as few time as possible, as little time as possible. Did I just say as few time? Anyway, forget my grammar. We're talking economics. We're not talking grammar today. So here's the truism that is a result of these two principles that are in play. The more stock you have of an item or a currency, the more you can charge to make the trade. The more you have of something, you don't need to put that price point lower as you do in real world economics. You actually can raise the price point in order to make trades that are more satisfactory to your customers. Buyers will pay more to have fewer trade times, right? And to have fewer number of times that they need to trade. Like in general, you can have higher price points, sometimes by huge amounts, depending on your buyer, in order to satisfy a player's desire to not interact with other players. That's right. You heard it right here, and I've said it before. You can use the friction and the pain in the butt that it is to trade in Path of Exile to your advantage to actually make more currency. If players don't want to make more trades, help the players out, become a great seller, become known as a great seller even, by making sure that you are able to deliver the currency or the items or the stack of whatever it is that the buyer is looking for, that you're able to deliver that stack in as few trades as possible, in as little hassle as possible. Sometimes players even will use their social tab in-game in Path of Exile to set certain ratios for certain trades. So that way, if you add somebody as a friend, I've done this for multiple leagues, you can add somebody as a friend and you just become known as their trader for a particular item, for a particular scarab, for a particular bestiary beast, for a particular ratio on bubblegum currency. You can be known as the go-to person for particular items, and then that saves somebody else the hassle of interacting with the trade website, and they know that you've got a trustworthy reputation. You're not ripping them off, you are charging them for the service, but you're doing so in a fashion that they appreciate. I can't believe I'm talking about customer service while also talking about Path of Exile, but yes, customer service is something that's valued in Path of Exile. Being able to deliver on what it is that your consumer would like in a fashion that your consumer appreciates earns you a reputation and earns you not just the sale immediately, but it can earn you future sales and future deals with people. I have legitimately funded entire in-game builds off of having 2 or 3 people who have gotten to know me just a little bit through trading, not gotten to know me through YouTube or Twitch or anything else, just in-game trading. That's it. And they come to me each and every league and make certain trades at certain ratios because they know I'm going to have the goods that they would like in a timely manner, and boom, bam, bang, and away we go. They get their items, they're happy, they're farming, they're interacting with whatever content they would like, and I just made a huge currency profit. I'm sharing this with you all not to brag and say, oh, don't you wish you were more like me? I'm sharing this with you so that way you can go, oh, I can be more like that. I actually have opportunity here to actually increase my currency through arbitrage trading and bulk trading mechanisms that are available to everybody. This isn't some secret streamer code or YouTuber code or anything like that. This isn't like a secret top 1%er code. These are basic economic principles that are in play that you too can take advantage of. At this point, you might be saying, okay, Iron, I'd like to give it a shot. I want to try this out, but I don't have any of the currency that's flying off the shelves right now that everybody's talking about and wanting to use. So how do I actually break into a market? Well, the truism is that the more stock you have of a currency or an item, the more you can charge to make that trade. So even if you have zero of a particular item, let's just say it's a scarab, right? We're in 324 Necropolis League at the time of the recording of this video. So there's been a whole rework about scarabs. Scarabs are flying off the shelves. Everybody's using scarabs for all sorts of different strategies. Well, even if you have zero of an item on the market, what you can do is you can enter that market space by purchasing up all of the individual sales of that particular scarab. Let's say it's the Scarab of Zoobling. Okay, that's not a real scarab, by the way. It's not a new hidden scarab. So you purchase up all of the offers of the Scarab of Zoobling, all right? They're all for sale, let's say at 10 chaos a piece for 1 each. Now, what you've done is you've told the market, I'm going to take on the friction of buying all of these individual pieces. So let's say you buy 10 of those Scarabs of Zoobling. All right, you now have a stack of 10 Scarabs of Zoobling. The next most wealthiest person for Scarabs of Zoobling has got a stack of 5 of them, and they're selling them at 15 chaos apiece. Now, what a consumer is thinking at this point is, do I want to go and purchase Scarabs of Zoobling for myself at a 10 chaos rate? Well, no, because all the individual available stock has been purchased up, and even if there's new ones that are coming onto the market, that player who's a consumer generally doesn't want to interact with the market that much. That's okay. Take advantage of that. So what that consumer is now saying is, I will pay a higher rate, 15 chaos per Zoobling, to buy the 5 chaos Zoobling that's out there for sale in bulk. Now that player that has those 5 Scarabs of Zoobling, all right, now sold 5 at 15. So that's 5 times 5 chaos worth of profit, right? Because they bought them presumably for 10 chaos each. So that means each Scarab of Zoobling made a 5 chaos profit. That means that the trades that player made, or the acquisition of those scarabs, actually turned out to be a 25 total chaos profit. Now, 25 chaos doesn't sound like a whole lot, right? What if you set your particular price point, since you've got 10 scarabs of Zoobling instead of just 5, what if you set it at 20? Now, here's another factor to consider in the terms of delivering a product to a consumer, thinking with the consumer in mind. Your competitor in your market space is selling the Scarabs of Zoobling at 15 chaos per. Now, stacks of chaos come at the moment in stacks of 20. That means in order to purchase, a player's got to shift click and maneuver around in order to purchase the direct amount of Zoobling scarabs that they would like to purchase. You, however, you are wise and you know that players don't like to click things. Players value their clicks and value their time. So you simply set all of your Zooblings, all 10 of them, at a price point of 20 chaos per Scarab of Zoobling. You might say, oh, nobody's going to buy it for that. But you'd be surprised at how many players are more than happy to simply dump into, especially with the new quality of life, dropping all currency from your stash into the trade tab, dumping 200 chaos into a stash tab trade, into a stash trade, versus putting in, what is that? Let's say, whatever it is, 15 times 5, right? And having to divvy up and count out all of the different chaos that's there. You can see how this works, especially, I'm going to emphasize this, especially with odd numbers of price points on items that are traded in bulk. So 13, 17, 15, I almost said 16 there. If there's an odd number of chaos that are valued for a bulk item, a lot of players don't want to shift click and do all of that, whatever math, whatever level of math it is that's needed. It could be basic addition. It could be just trading or even shift clicking a single stack, right? All the other stacks could be counted in 20s. But some players don't even want to do a single stack. This is why sometimes when you're bulk trading, if you're trading something for like 99 chaos, sometimes people will just trade you 100 chaos in general. They'll give you the additional chaos because they don't want to shift click. It's too boring to them. They don't want to waste their clicks that way. They don't want to use their time that way. So because you know this about consumer behavior, you can set your price point for your Scarabs of Zoobling at 20 chaos per. You've purchased these for a grand total of 100 chaos. You purchased 10 of them at 10C. You're now selling 10 of them for 20 chaos each, so that means that you've brought back in 200 chaos. That means you've made a net profit of 100 chaos. Now, That might not sound like a whole lot to wherever you're at in the league right now. It might sound like a ton. For some of you watching this video, that's more chaos than you've ever seen. For others of you, you make that in a single map. So who cares, right? I don't even know why you're watching this at that point. If you make that amount of currency, I guess maybe you just hate watching, in which case, hello, welcome. It's nice to have you here. I'm sure I'll read your comment and laugh at it later. The bigger point of the picture that I want you to take away from these examples for our scarabs of Zoobling is to think about the profit ratio that you just made. You just doubled the amount of currency that you put into a particular market. You put in 100 chaos as an investment, and you got back out 200. Imagine if you start doing that not with 100 chaos, but 500, 1,000. What about 10 divines? What about 20 divines? What if you're able to find a market and you're able to double your levels of investment over the course of, I don't know, let's say a single trading session. Let's say over 2 trading sessions. Let's say over the course of a week, you compound your stash to go to the point from, let's say, starting out on a league start weekend with 10C that you found through mapping and through playing, all the way to the end of the first week, and you're rolling in over 5,000 chaos already because you've made arbitrage bulk trading your chosen mechanism for making currency in the league. I don't want you to just think these are hypothetical numbers. These are real numbers that you can actually track other accounts and other players doing as you look at their stash tabs, as you look at the trades that they've got and the quantities of trades and the quantities of goods that they've got. Everybody starts a league with this amount of currency. Why is it that every single league, certain players are able to consistently generate the same numbers and huge numbers of trading outputs? One of the reasons is because of arbitrage and bulk trading. At this point, you're saying, all right, Iron, you've convinced me. I want to try it. How do I actually know what market to enter into? How do I know which items or currency are in demand? Well, you need to start asking yourself, is there a scarab, a map, a bestiary beast, or even a skill gem? You can do this with skill gems. I've legitimately made currency, I want to say that was 2 years ago, just by trading up uncorrupted versions of Enhance and Empower, and simply buying those in bulk, setting them at a bulk price. And then there were players who were coming in and who were corrupting those items, who wanted to either make big risks or make big currency. And so they would buy up those gems for Enhance or Enlighten or Empower that are uncorrupted gems in bulk. So you can apply this principle with almost anything. It doesn't just have to be currency. It doesn't just have to be scarabs. You can do it with maps. You can do it, like we just said, with gems. You can do it with almost anything except rare items and uniques. I haven't seen anybody make any kind of levels of successful currency through stockpiling rares or stockpiling uniques. I'm sure there are people who do that, but that's a bit different in terms of the approach. And at least from what I've observed, the people who do that generally corner the market, and it's usually a group of players who are doing that. Whereas with arbitrage and bulk trading, you actually as a solo player can apply these principles. So you want to start asking the question, is there something out there that is particularly of interest in the moment in the league that I'm playing in? How are you going to gauge whether or not there's a particular item that's of value or a particular currency that's of value or of interest? Well, you're going to gauge that by using PoE Ninja. You're going to go take a look at the economy, and what you're going to look at is you're going to look at the volume of trading going on with a particular item. Yes, you're going to want to look at the graph chart and see what the profit is and whether or not it's trending up or trending down. Yes, you're going to want to individually click the little trade button and go see who are the people actually listing. Is there somebody price fixing and that's actually messing with the volume of trades that are going on or with the graph scale? You're going to want to check all those things. But one of the first things you're going to want to do before you determine to enter into a market is go check out PoE Ninja and see the volume of trades that are going on for a particular item, for a scarab, for a gem, for a beast, and just see, are there other people in this market? Sometimes you're going to want to go into a market where there's a huge volume of trades because you can go and see, yep, there's a lot of supply right now. Maybe I can corner a particular aspect of this market by purchasing up a whole bunch of these low-priced things and sell them for bulk. Maybe there's not a whole lot of volume of trades going on right now, which means I can actually go in, make fewer trades, and ultimately set a higher price point, and maybe that'll be doing a service to the economy, and that's a price point, or that's an item that I need to jump into. You're also going to want to check YouTube. Believe it or not, when YouTube content creators release videos, it has an impact on the economy, whether it's the Mathel effect, the Grimrow effect, the Zizaran effect, whatever we want to call it. When players come out with new strategies for farming that require certain inputs, that has an impact on the economy. So you're going to want to check out, hey, over the last 24 hours to 48 hours, what videos have actually come out that have been impacting the economy? Is there a build guide that's coming out that requires you to use, I don't know, veiled orbs? Or is there a particular sort of crafting guide that has recently come out that requires you to use this particular type of currency in order to generate that particular outcome? These are ways for you to check whether or not there's certain levels of interest among the player base playing and interacting with the economy, and whether or not there's going to be demand for you to enter into a market and reap the rewards of it. Twitch is another spot to go and check. Twitch generally is better than YouTube in this regard, in that it's something that's happening live. Here's the thing about the relationship with Twitch and YouTube economically. Generally, if somebody is doing something profitable on Twitch, within the next 24 hours or so, somebody's going to make a YouTube about that exact strategy, and that'll come out. So it can be a little bit risky, actually. You can go and follow and try and buy into something that someone's streaming on Twitch, and maybe it turns out to be not that profitable, and so it doesn't actually pick up steam and carry away and become a defining part of the economy. In other words, it won't be a market that a lot of players are interacting with. So you could accidentally sink currency into something that might not be that great. This is where it's important to remember to diversify your portfolio, right? Don't just sink all your currency into one particular item, because otherwise, well, you might wake up the next day and you might have lost a ton of currency because the value of that particular item went down. So just be aware of that. You want to check all of these places. These are all places to check and gather information from. So Twitch is another one. Reddit on the official Path of Exile subreddit and the Path of Exile builds subreddit are two places also to check to see what players are complaining about, to see maybe players are complaining about friction in the economy, that it's too difficult to make trades. Well, that tells you what players are feeling like in the moment, and you can take advantage of that as a seller by saying, look, it's a pain in the butt to trade. So here you go. I'll make all the trades that you'd ever like. Maybe I'll even add you as a friend. I'll start listing my particular items in my social tab, or maybe I'll just let you know, hey, would you like these scarabs? I can message you, I can ping you, I can take some of the friction out of the trade by going to particular players who have traded with me in the past. Maybe a particular player has messaged me for X number of currency. I can say, if I acquire more of this, would you like more? For instance, the same thing is true with maps, or even with crafting resources like Delve Crafts or Bestiary Crafts, or with Coffins right now, or with All Flames right now in the Necropolis League. This is all information that's usable. If people are complaining about the economy and how difficult it is to trade, you can make currency off of that by making sure that you make a friend or two and you let them know when you've got a supply for the thing that they're in demand of. The last place to check is the official Path of Exile forums. Oftentimes players will be complaining there about scarcity or about abundance or about a whole number of things, discussing all sorts of different topics. Included in that are economic discussions about how difficult it is to trade, but also the abundance of things, or maybe potentially the scarcity of things. That's a great spot to go and get info to see whether or not there's a particular market that you should diversify some of your economic currency into, to see if there's sufficient demand there to sink more currency into it and to continue to upscale your economic engine. Well, everybody take a deep breath. All right, we just covered a whole bunch of different topics, used a whole bunch of different examples. I can already hear somebody down below in the comments, oh, Iron, you didn't talk about this particular aspect. Okay, that's fine. That's fair. Drop me a comment with something that I missed out on. I'd love to interact with those comments down below. I'd love to hear what questions you have about arbitrage trading and bulk trading and Path of Exile tips and tricks and trading in general. I'm happy to share whatever tips and tools and tricks that I've got. Part of the reason why I'm able to do this is because I'm confident enough in these methods. A lot of players will keep their methods generally secret in terms of particular trades or particular ratios. A lot of players will do that because there's a fear that if information gets out, then their corner of the market will actually suffer. I'm able to share this stuff because I am absolutely confident that these couple of things are true in Path of Exile. Players hate to make a lot of trades. Players collect things that they don't want. Players are able to buy things that they do want, and players value their time and their clicks. Because of those couple of principles that are in play and those truisms that emerge from it, it is always going to be profitable in Path of Exile to be able to trade bulk amounts of currency, bulk amounts of items, and to be able to scale up your ratios and make more profit as you reduce the tension and reduce the friction among the player base that is looking to make those purchases. So drop me a comment with your questions down below, or with your comments, with your hate comments. I'll read them. I'll get back to them as time allows. And as always, I hope the 324 Necropolis League is the League of Mirror of Calandra drops for you. And then with that Mirror of Calandra, you can be asking, all right, which market should I invest into to make my second Mirror of Calandra? If you did enjoy today's discussion, you can of course like, subscribe, and ding the bell. I didn't mention that today at the beginning of the discussion because I wanted to make sure anybody who actually got to the end of the video definitely enjoyed the discussion. Whether or not they learned anything from it, hopefully you at least enjoyed it. Hopefully it was a companion voice to you as you were playing Path of Exile or maybe falling asleep in the background. Thanks so much for joining us today, and I look forward to catching you in the next time.
Thanks for watching that video. If you'd like more information on any of our discussion points today, you can see them down below in the video description. If you'd also like to join our Discord or support our Patreon, you can do so with the links down below. Thanks again, and big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters.